Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
At my age, I'm 56, you have to rest 2-3 days between exertions, right? So if I'm running, I have to wait 2-3 days before I run again. Whereas when I was younger, I would run every single day. And then the other thing is I learned about high intensity interval training and VO2 max and getting my heart rate up to aerobic threshold to build my VO2 max, because VO2 max is essential for longevity and physical fitness. And then, circuit training at my age, I learned that it's stupid to try to lift heavy weights, that you want to bring your weight down and then do high reps and then do circuit training so that you keep your heart rate up. So it's always about cardiovascular fitness, but then adding strength on top of that, and be consistent and don't get hurt.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed Dr. Judson Brandeis. Dr. Brandeis is a board-certified urologist who practices men's health and sexual medicine in Northern California. He's also the lead author of the book 21st Century Man, in which 60 board-certified doctors and men's health experts offer advice and insider secrets to maintain your physical, mental, and sexual health. We discuss the importance of optimal testosterone, along with habits to better your sexual health, cutting-edge technology to help build muscle, importance of increasing VO2 max, and Dr. Brandeis' P-Long protocol. I really enjoyed my interview with Dr. Brandeis. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have Dr. Judson Brandeis on. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We were introduced from Brad Kearns, good podcast friend of mine, and mentioned that you're an author. You run a male sexual wellness clinic in San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And the book that you have is called The 21st Century Man, which is right behind you there. If you're watching on YouTube. When did
Absolutely.
that book? Yeah, when did that book come out?
That was my COVID project. So I had to shut down for about 3 months. And I'm one of those people, I'm a restless soul. And so it started out as just a sexual medicine book. But the thing is, sexual health is sort of at the top of the pyramid for middle-aged men. If you're 20, it's a different story. But if you're in your 50s or 60s or 70s, so many things in your life have to go right in order for you to have a rewarding sex life. You have to have good physical health. You have to have good emotional health, good mental health, good relationship health. And if all those things align, then you can have good sexual health. And so, it started out just a book on sexual medicine, but it kind of snowballed really quickly into a book that encompassed all aspects of men's health, including, physical health, specialty health. There's a whole section on relationship health, on emotional health, on addictions, on aesthetics, on health insurance, and then, a huge section on sexual health, and then other men's physical issues and problems. So it really turned into a very cool project.
Yeah, I feel like COVID was a time to do things like that. That's when I started the podcast. I was like, so there were positives from COVID for sure. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it took a little bit, not a little. It took a lot longer than I thought. But it started out at 30 chapters and ended up to be 101 chapters and 900 pages.
Oh, wow.
But big. Each chapter is like a little mini book unto itself. And they're really cool chapters like I've never seen in any men's health magazine or men's health book. Like, for example, I have a friend, Russ Bartels, who's an outstanding gynecologist. He wrote a chapter on what men need to know about menopause. Right. I mean, that's huge for guys in their 50s and 60s. If you don't understand what's going on with your wife or your partner, and if you don't understand what the aging vagina is all about, you're going to be out in the cold. Or there's a chapter written by a friend of mine who's an ER doc, Malcolm Johnson, on stupid things that men do to get themselves into the emergency room. right? So if you're 60 and you don't understand that it's a dumb idea for you to go up on a ladder to put Christmas lights up, then you're going to fall and break your hip. And guess what? Your pickleball career is over. There's.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I was just going to say the book. So the book's like a collaboration from sort of contacts that you have throughout different professions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, like, I know what I know and I know what I don't know.
Right.
And so, but I know a lot of people that know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. So, there's chapters on eyes and sleeping and hearing and nutrition and exercise and stretching and mindfulness and yoga and leaving a legacy and gratitude and you name it, health insurance.
Was there one or two things that came up throughout the process that you never were aware of and that you started maybe implementing for yourself?
That's a great question. I changed the way I train. So I do what I call ABC training. So A is for ambulate. So usually I'm either on my elliptical or running. B is for bike. So I have a spinner bike. And then C is for circuit training. So I learned, at my age, I'm 56, you have to rest 2-3 days between exertions, right? So if I'm running, I have to wait 2-3 days before I run again. Whereas when I was younger, I would run every single day. And then the other thing is I learned about high intensity interval training and VO2 max and getting my heart rate up to aerobic threshold to build my VO2 max, because VO2 max is essential for longevity and physical fitness. And then, C, circuit training. At my age, I learned that it's stupid to try to lift heavy weights, that you want to bring your weight down and then do high reps and then do circuit training so that you keep your heart rate up. So it's always about cardiovascular fitness, but then adding strength on top of that, and be consistent and don't get hurt. The other thing I learned is the essentials for building muscle, especially at my age. So creatine, I put all my patients on creatine, 2.5 grams before and after workouts. Hydration, a nitric oxide booster. So it's essential to boost circulation. And so I actually created a nitric oxide booster called Affirm. And then the essential of sleep, right? When you go to the gym, what I learned is you're actually not building muscle, you're tearing muscle down. And sleep is actually when you rebuild muscle. So you need to get 6 or 8 hours of sleep in order to rebuild muscle. If you're not getting 6 or 8 hours of sleep, don't go to the gym. Don't waste your time. Right. Because you're basically not going to be getting the benefit of the time that you put in at the gym. And then also, there's a great chapter by Gary Donovitz, who is this ex-CEO of BioT and founder of BioT, on testosterone, right? So if your testosterone levels aren't optimized, then don't bother going to the gym, because you're not going to build muscle, because testosterone is the essential growth hormone for men for building muscle. And if you don't have enough testosterone, doesn't matter how many trips to the gym you make, you're not going to build testosterone. And, what I learned really was the ideal testosterone levels aren't what your local primary care doc or urologist is going to recommend to you. They're going to recommend, get your testosterone between 500 and 700. But, in my pretty vast experience with testosterone, I understand for a guy over 50, if you want to feel good, if you want to build muscle, if you want to burn fat, if you want libido, you got to get your testosterone between 1,000 and 1,400.
What are some of the best ways to increase testosterone? Because, you talk about exercise. Is exercise obviously helpful in boosting testosterone, and what other habits might help?
It is. So generationally, our generation's testosterone is about 30% lower than it was 50 years ago. Right. And you're kind of scratching your head like, why is that? But if you think about it, your body only makes what it needs. Right. So if you're a hunter and you're out on the plain, like trying to kill bison, you need a lot of testosterone because bisons are big and they don't like to be killed. Right. If you're a farmer, farmers work hard, but they're not killing bison, but you still need a pretty high testosterone. But if you're sitting in front of a laptop all day and not killing bison and not as physically active as a farmer is, your body's going to say, well, we don't need that much testosterone. And so your body's not going to expend energy to make a lot of testosterone. And so in general, our testosterone levels are a lot lower than they used to be. Now, if you're exercising, maybe your body's thinking, well, maybe I'm a farmer, or maybe if you're really lifting hard and maybe doing some boxing or whatever, then maybe your body's thinking, well, maybe I'm a hunter, and you're going to ratchet up the testosterone levels that your body makes. And so, that's sort of my 2 cents on what it takes to build testosterone. Now, the other thing is you can take supplements. So I have a supplement called Support, which has DHEA, which is a testosterone precursor. It's got DIM because testosterone gets aromatized into estrogen, right? So people think testosterone and estrogen are two vastly different things, but if you look at the actual molecular structure of testosterone and estrogen, they only differ by a single hydrogen atom. So the smallest unit of matter atomically is the difference between men and women. So you need to block the aromatization of testosterone to estrogen, especially if you're overweight, right? So you do a lot of aromatization of testosterone to estrogen in fat. And then it has some Tonkat Ali. Tonkat Ali actually blocks the conversion of testosterone, total testosterone into free testosterone. So it increases free testosterone. And then it's got some ashwagandha, which is the other botanical that's been shown to boost testosterone. But even with a really good supplement, you're only going to boost it about 15%. So if you're coming in to see me and you have a testosterone of 300 and you have the clinical symptoms of low testosterone, right? I never treat a patient based on a number. I only treat patients based on symptoms, right? So if you come to see me and your testosterone is 200, but if you're muscular and you're having great sex and you have good energy, I'm not going to touch you. But if your testosterone is 500 and I've ruled out all the other things that could be causing your symptoms, I will treat you with testosterone. And I've done that plenty of times and guys feel great.
TRT.
Yeah.
What other markers do you recommend perhaps that get looked at from time to time, maybe every, 3 to 6 months? Maybe that's too often, but are there certain markers other than testosterone that you recommend for male clients?
Yeah, there's sort of standard labs that everyone gets. Like a CBC has your hematocrit, which is your blood count. You got your platelet levels. You have what's called a comprehensive metabolic level, which looks at your kidney function, looks at your liver function, looks at your electrolytes, looks at your albumin, which is a protein, a total protein. So, there are sort of standard labs and maybe once a year to get those things, because those things don't change all that much. The stuff that changes that I like to look at is, free and total testosterone and estrogen level. You should get a thyroid screen, because if your thyroid is low, it can masquerade as low testosterone. You get the same symptoms with a low thyroid as you would with low testosterone. You get the same symptoms if you have, really poor sleep habits, sleep apnea or something like that. If you're only getting 2-3 hours of interrupted sleep every night, guess what? You're tired, you get fat, you get sluggish, your libido goes down, right? Looks just like low testosterone, but guess what? Your testosterone could be fine. It's you're not getting enough sleep, right? You make testosterone when you sleep. It's like my electric car, right? If I only plug it in for 2 hours every night, guess what? I can't drive very far. If I plug it in for 8 hours, guess what? I can drive from here to Sacramento or, wherever I want to go. So it's about all of your bodily systems kind of working together. And a lot of it's really not that hard. When I talk to my patients or when I go on podcasts, there are about 10 things you can do that are really simple and easy and inexpensive to improve your overall health and fitness, above the level of about 95% of folks.
Well, let's go into those.
Yeah.
You probably already mentioned, I'm assuming you're going to say sleep.
Yeah. If you don't drink alcohol, right? You don't do drugs, you don't smoke, you don't eat too much, you don't eat high cholesterol foods, you exercise every day, you stretch every day, you meditate, you get enough sleep, and you're nice to other people, you'll be better off than 95% of people.
Yeah.
And it's really not hard.
No, I think if you sticking to the basics is important. Those fundamentals, sleep. I also would maybe add in, you talk about meditation, like stress management. And even with exercise, like you said, exercise every day. I mean, probably doesn't need to be necessarily every day, especially like you mentioned, if you're an older, maybe 40, 50 plus year old male or female. What other things in the book that you came away that maybe, you changed your mind on certain things, or, what other sort of different things that you got from the book that maybe you didn't have before?
Yeah. I mean, there's a really interesting aesthetics section. And men, I think, reject aesthetics, but there's so many easy things to do for aesthetic purposes that women do. It's not like, these aren't high-tech new innovation things. They're really kind of low-tech things that women already do that we should kind of capitalize on. For example, there's a technology called hydrofacial or diamond glow. And it's basically like sandblasting your face with water. And it digs out all the crap that ends up in our pores. A lot of men are outside working. I have, ex-professional baseball players and tennis players and football players and guys that, do construction, and we get all this stuff in our face and it makes our face look old. And all you have to do is this hydrofacial once a year, and it dramatically improves the appearance of your face. Or, a little bit of Botox or Botox neurotoxin in the forehead and the crow's feet. And it takes 5 years off your face. So, I mean, there's a lot of these kind of aesthetic innovations that are really simple that actually make a huge difference in terms of appearance. There's a great chapter in the book by Miguel Canales, who's one of the top hair surgeons in the country, on basically simple things that you can do to keep your hair. Now, obviously, it didn't work for me, or I wrote the book after it was too late by that point. But I mean, taking a biotin-based supplement, taking oral minoxidil, using near-infrared light therapy, all pretty simple things that can help you keep your hair so that you don't have to take a medication like finasteride, which has some very significant side effects in terms of decreased libido. And I even see, a fair number of people with what we call post-finasteride erectile dysfunction, where guys totally lose erectile function as a long-term side effect of being on these medications.
Yeah. What other things that have you implemented into your clinic? I know Brad went in there. I think, did he get a whole treatment, whole experience? He did VO2 Max. What other type of things?
He did VO2 Max. The other thing is I'm a huge proponent of Emsculpt. So I don't know if you know what Emsculpt is, but Emsculpt uses high-intensity focused electromagnetic waves, so the creation of electromagnetic fields to contract muscle. And it can build muscle literally 10 to 15 times faster than you could in the gym. So I did a study.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And I was just going to say, I did do I went to a place in outside of Chicago that was, I think it's along the same lines. I put electrodes on all over my body and did a workout, like 10, 15-minute workout. And it's like stimulating the muscle as I'm doing these movements. Is it do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So that's kind of like a fancy TENS unit, right? So remember back in high school physics, that's direct current. So it's a point-to-point current. So the current takes the path of least resistance. And so when it goes through the electrodes through the skin is where the pain and temperature receptors are, right? So you can't generate that much electricity because it'll hurt. The other thing is it goes very superficially through the muscle because it's point-to-point. What the technology that I'm using is, which is from a company called BTL, which is a huge Czechoslovakian medical technology company. It is high-intensity focused electromagnetic waves. So it creates an alternating electromagnetic field, and you can set the depth of penetration. So it doesn't go through the skin. I mean, the waves go through the skin, but you don't really feel the waves. And what it does is it depolarizes the muscle. Right. So muscles work on ionic gradients. Like, I'm going to talk fancy doctor talk, but I think your listeners are pretty smart. So I'll try to kind of make it appropriate. Right. So muscles work on ionic gradients, right? So positive and negative ions. And so when your brain wants to move a muscle, it sends an electrical charge down a nerve. An electrical charge is just basically an ionic gradient that runs down a nerve. And then that electrical charge gets to a muscle and causes depolarization of the muscle. So the change of polarity of the muscle causes contraction of a muscle. Contraction means to make shorter, right? And so if you look at a muscle under the microscope, there's thin fibers and thick fibers, and those thin fibers and thick fibers kind of ratchet alongside each other into a contraction. And a contraction is making muscles shorter, which makes your muscles bigger, right? And so what this technology does is it bypasses the nerves and directly stimulates the muscle, causing a depolarization of the muscle, right? And so why does it work better than a workout? The reason it works better than a workout is because you have a circuit breaker in your brain that prevents your muscles from working at super high capacities. And the reason for this is that, right, we're animals. So if you think about like a squirrel, if a squirrel, I use squirrels because I have tons of squirrels that in the view outside of my windows.
Plenty around my...
Yeah. So if you're a squirrel and you overexert yourself and you pull a tendon, rupture a tendon, you're dead, right? You can't climb trees and you can't get away from hawks. And so you die. And so your brain has a circuit breaker that makes sure that you don't overexert muscles to cause injury. Now, if you're stuck under a boulder and you're going to die anyway, then you generate a massive amount of adrenaline and you generate what's called superhuman strength, that boulder off your body, right? So in very rare occasions where it's basically life or death, you can overcome that circuit breaker, because at the end of the day, who cares, about saving a muscle if you're going to die? But what the machine can do is you can dial up the amount of current or electromagnetic field. You can stimulate 100% of the muscle as opposed to, say, 50% of the muscle. And then you can do that for an extended period of time, 20, 25 minutes. And there's part of the protocol that drives out the lactic acid, so you're not sore the next day. And so a lot of, like, pretty much every movie star that you see in Hollywood with six-pack abs, they're using Emsculpt.
Interesting. So I was just looking it up right now. So is this for just mainly commercial use? Pretty much, you'd probably have to go find a place that does it in your area.
They're pretty much everywhere these days. And the interesting thing is, the company is really focused on the aesthetic population, because the aesthetic population is shelling out money to look better. But the aesthetic population is about 90% women. And so what I do for the company is really promote this to men, because I honestly believe that this by far and away is critical, essential for men. And it's what I do in my office is build muscle and burn fat, right? It's easy. Anyone can burn fat, right? Super easy. Just tell your clients to stop eating, right? You're going to lose fat. But to build muscle at the same time you're burning fat, that's hard to do. And that's what we do with our combination approach.
Is this something, so Emsculpt, is this something that you do for yourself as well?
Oh yeah, I got it for myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's $250,000 for the machine, but I mean, you could hit my abs with a baseball bat and I wouldn't flinch, and I haven't done a sit-up in 4 years. Anytime I have a spare moment, I hop on the machine. I can do abs, I can do glutes, I can do biceps, triceps, quads. I mean, it's amazing. Right. When I get stressed out, you can ask my staff, when I get stressed out, I go and hop on the machine.
Really? And are you how long are you on it for?
For big muscles, it's half an hour. For small muscles like biceps, triceps, calves, it's 20 minutes.
So you're doing this in conjunction to workouts?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't do any biceps or triceps or abs or glutes anymore. I do some glutes, but I just focus on other muscles, and I focus on cardio. And then, what I have in the office is a body composition scan. And so we follow our patients, so we know, are things working? Are things not working? And, I have a brag book about that thick of all my before and afters for my patients. It's just so cool to see guys burning fat, building muscle, feeling better about themselves, having better physical intimacy with our partners. Because the thing is, like, there are things that I can do to help fix erectile function or sexual function. But if you don't take good care of yourself and your circulation and your muscles, et cetera, those improvements are going to be short-lived. And I want the improvements in my patients to be long-lived. I want to turn my patients' lives around in a very significant way.
Very interesting. Yeah. I think Brad mentioned this to me briefly, but you're the first person to come on to talk about that. What else do you have in your clinic that you find effective with clients?
Let's see. We do a lot of, I just launched a new protocol called the P-Long protocol. And so a lot of guys are interested in improving the length, girth, and function of their penis, especially younger guys, right? Not guys with erectile dysfunction. Guys with erectile dysfunction don't have enough blood flow to even fill up the penis that they have. But for younger guys who have good erections, but for whatever reason want a bigger penis, the options that existed before were really limited and were really bad. You could use fillers, you could do fat transfers, there's a silicone implant, you can cut ligaments. And I would see patients from all those different technologies that were just disasters. And you take a guy with a perfectly normal penis that functions perfectly well, and all of a sudden, they have scar tissue, their penises are shorter, they're not functioning well, they look deformed. And so I have a background in clinical research. I did research at American Red Cross. I did research at Harvard. I did research at UCLA. And so I created a protocol, clinical research protocol, got IRB approval, got it listed on clinicaltrials.gov, which is the NIH website, and got 30 guys and did my protocol of a traction device, a suction device, the use of PRP or platelet-rich plasma, and my Affirm nitric oxide boosting supplement. And what we found is that after about 6 months, guys grew their penises about 1 inch in length, about 1/2 inch in girth, and everyone improved in erectile function.
Really?
And so, yeah. So I presented it as an oral presentation at the International Society of Sexual Medicine. So a bunch of kind of crazy, weird dudes like myself that do research in sexual function. And then I recently published it in Andrology, which is a reviewed journal. And then I got the final results also accepted for presentation at the Sexual Medicine Society of North America, which is a big academic meeting of
and so it's called is it a P-Long?
Yeah. So
what's the protocol there?
It's p-long.com. And the protocol is an injection of PRP once a month. And I'll explain what that is in just a second. To take Affirm, which is a nitric oxide booster, 2 tablets twice a day, to use a traction device called the Restorex, which is developed by a friend of mine at the Mayo Clinic, 20 minutes twice a day, and to use a penis pump 12 minutes twice a day. And so, the combination of the traction for length, the suction for girth, the Affirm for boosting circulation, and then the sort of magic sauce is PRP. So PRP is platelet-rich plasma, right? So platelets in the body have 2 functions. One function is to cause a clot, right? Everyone knows platelets cause clots. But the other function is platelets cause regrowth. So say you're out in the garage, putting something together and you cut yourself. Okay, what happens? You start to bleed. The tissue that's damaged sends a bunch of what are called inflammatory cytokines, right? So chemical messages in the body that attract platelets. Platelets get attracted to the area of bleeding and they become activated. There's a lot of calcium that's floating around there and that activates platelets, and platelets become activated. They release what are called alpha granules, and alpha granules are packed with clotting factors, but they're also packed with growth factors, right? So, what happens is you form a clot, you form a scab, the scab falls off, and the tissue grows back. And the reason that the tissue grows back is that the growth factors from platelets cause an acceleration of growth from stem cells and other cells to repair tissue. And so we just take advantage of that tissue repair to accelerate the growth of the penis, right? And they use PRP in orthopedics, a lot of athletes, professional sports players.
Injuries.
They use it. Yeah, right. Exactly. They use it in hair growth. They use it in wound healing. And then a buddy of mine, Charles Runnels, developed what's called the P shot. So he was the first guy that was brave enough to inject PRP into his penis. And then also the O shot, right? So that you can inject it into the clitoris to improve sensitivity, to improve orgasmic function in women.
Wow. Interesting.
And it's all in the book. and a whole lot more.
Yeah. Well, that's you got a lot in there then.
I got a great chapter by Susan Bratton on how to please a woman. And all sorts of stuff.
What types of, I'm a big routine guy. What types of routines that maybe you implement or that you help your clients implement, maybe a morning or evening routine to help sort of, maybe bring all this all together and help him, improve performance and testosterone and male sexual performance as well? What type of routines do you implement?
Yeah, I don't get into the weeds like that with my patients. Okay. Everyone's different. Some people, I live in the Bay Area. The traffic's really bad here. And some people go to work at 4:00. Some people work the night shift. Some people work during the day. And so everyone's got to figure out their own routines. I think you're right. Routines are really essential. Routines are kind of what get you ahead. And so I get myself into routine, and then I get ahead, and then I give myself a break. Go on vacation or take a couple of days off or do something fun or whatever. So, routines are really essential, but you have to develop your own routines based on your own sort of the logistics of your own individual. Like I have a little home gym that I built. Some people like going to the gym. It really varies.
And I know we talked before we went on about VO2 max. Maybe let's hit on that a little bit as maybe not a crucial test, but an important test maybe individuals could do to sort of see where they're at as far as performance is concerned.
Yeah, VO2 max is really a fascinating test because it combines pulmonary function, heart function, muscle function, and endothelial function. Right, endothelia are the blood vessels that the cells that line the inside of blood vessels, right? And really what you're measuring is your aerobic capacity, right? So if you remember back to high school biology, you have fuel, which is glucose. Glucose is formed, it combines with oxygen. Well, let me back up a little bit. Okay. So the ultimate source of all the energy in the universe is the sun, or our universe is the sun, right? Sun shines on the earth, right? And the sun is the source of energy. And we have these things called trees. And trees have this thing called chlorophyll. And what chlorophyll does is it captures the energy of the sun, and it takes carbon dioxide and it takes water and it combines them. And so you have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And it makes something called glucose, fructose, sucrose, any sugar. And sugar is basically a battery to store energy. The chemical bonds in a sugar molecule stores energy, right? And then so the tree takes all the sun, the water, the carbon dioxide, and it creates sugar, and it puts it in fruit, or it puts it in maple sugar, or it puts it in whatever. And then animals come along and eat it, right? And so then when animals come along and eat it, it's a source of energy. But how does animals get the energy out of glucose? What they do is they take that glucose molecule and they combine it with oxygen. And when you do that, you get 36 ATPs, right? ATP is a unit of energy in the body. It's adenosine with 3 phosphates. And the energy in ATP is stored in the bond between the adenosine and the phosphate. And so when you're working out, you release one of the phosphates, and that phosphate, that energy that was holding that phosphate, you can harness that energy to help move the muscle, right? And so you need glucose and you need oxygen, right? And our body stores a lot of glucose, right? So we store it in the liver, we store it in the bloodstream. And so say you're walking you're using about 2 liters of oxygen, and that 2 liters of oxygen is matched with glucose, and it produces 36 ATPs. Then you start to jog. Maybe you're using 3 liters of oxygen. Then you start to run. Then you're using 4 liters of oxygen. Then you start to run fast. Then you're using 5 liters of oxygen. Now, say all of a sudden a bear jumps out from behind a tree and starts chasing you, right? You got to run faster. So maybe you're able to use 5.5 liters of oxygen, but that's all your body is able to extract from the air, right? In terms of your lung function, your circulatory system, right? And then say a whole family of bears jumps out and starts chasing you, and you try to run faster, but guess what? You can only use 5 liters of oxygen, right? So there's a way that your body can manufacture a little bit of energy from glucose, right? It's called anaerobic respiration, right? So respiration or using glucose without oxygen. So you make only 2 ATPs. Instead of 36, you only make 2 ATPs. You crack the glucose molecule in half. You make pyruvic acid or lactic acid, and that acid builds up in your muscles. It starts to burn, and you basically run out of gas, right? And so what VO2 max measures is that point where you run out of gas, where your body can't bring in as much oxygen to match to glucose to make that 36 ATPs. It's only making 2 ATPs. And it's really interesting. So basically we have an exercise bike and we have a protocol, and you ride faster and faster and faster and faster to the point where you can't ride anymore, right? And we have a mask on, and we monitor how much oxygen and how much carbon dioxide you produce. And it's very, very reproducible. As soon as I see the oxygen curve peak and start to go down, I turn to my assistant, we count to 5, and the person gets off the bike, right? Once you hit your aerobic threshold and you're not making 36 ATPs, you're only making 2 ATPs, you have enough energy for about 5 seconds, and that's it, right? And that number, that VO2 max, is incredibly predictive for someone's cardiovascular fitness and athletic potential, right? So Vingegaard, the guy that got first in the Tour de France, he had a VO2 max of 97, the second highest ever recorded, right? I mean, that's insane. But, the guy just crushed everyone in the time trial, right? He beat the field by more than 6%. He beat Pogacar by 3%. He beat the rest of the field by over 6%. I mean, that's insane.
Is this why you do high intensity interval training to help?
Exactly. Yeah. So with high intensity interval training, what you're trying to do is to get your heart rate up and your oxygen utilization up to failure. And so each time you're pushing yourself to your VO2 max, and the theory is if you keep pushing yourself to the VO2 max, then you'll be able to move that number. That one number doesn't, it's some of it you're born with, and some of it, you train with, right? So, cyclists and cross-country skiers, especially Scandinavian cross-country skiers, have the highest VO2 maxes. Some endurance or long-distance runners have pretty good VO2 maxes. What do you recommend for interval training? I know I've talked with Brad about this. High intensity repeat training he's talked about before, and I'm trying to think of the guest who talked about that that came on both of our podcasts. But like, for example, I have a Rogue bike, almost those heavy duty fan bikes, and I'll do like literally sets of like 10 seconds, and then I'll rest until I feel like I can give that same amount of effort for the next one, and I'll do that maybe 6 times. You should monitor your heart rate so you can see what your heart rate recovery looks like. Right. But, it's really what you can do without getting hurt. I used to do it when I was running competitively. I used to do it on the track. I can't do that anymore. Sure. Now I do it on a spinner bike, or you can do it on a rowing machine, or if you're a swimmer, you can do it in the pool. But once you hit 50, your tendons and ligaments start to dry up, right? They start to desiccate. And so you're much, much more likely to injure yourself doing the stuff that you used to be able to do. Like I had a good friend, she's ready to run the Chicago Marathon, and she trains the local running team. And someone on our team was being lazy. And so she challenged that person to run up a hill, and she beat the kid up the hill, right? The kid was like 17, 18 years old, and she's almost 50. But, the next day she's like, I think I tore something. Right. And I had to see her in the office the other day to do shockwave on her to try to get her ready for Chicago Marathon. Right. So, I mean, you have to be really, really smart about how you work out when you're our age. When you're 20, it's like not a big deal. You can do whatever you want. But when you're our age, you really have to be smart because, an injury can take you out for 3 to 6 months. And during those 3 to 6 months, I've seen with my patients, you put weight on, you get depressed, you don't feel good about yourself. And so it's really like when I'm exercising, as soon as I feel something not right, I stop and I'll go do something else. If I'm running, I'll go to the bike, or I'll go to the rowing machine, or I'll go do abs.
Now, as far as monitoring heart rate, what should you just get an idea of what your heart rate max should be, and then how do you sort of walk that line of increasing your potential and then obviously not overdoing it?
Yeah, honestly, there are a lot of trainers that know a lot of this stuff a lot better than I do.
Okay.
I try to do the zone 2, zone 5 stuff. So basically I do, I try to get my heart rate up to about 75% of my max, which is 220 minus your age. So if you go 220 minus your age, multiplied by 0.75, that's the kind of range I try to do my long distance training at. And then when I'm doing bursts, doing HIIT training, I try to get to 85, 90% or more on those bursts. And YouTube is like one of the greatest things ever. I mean, you can get your bikes, put a big TV in front of it, go to YouTube, high intensity interval cycle training, and there's like 50 videos from people that know a lot more than I do on high intensity interval cycling training.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Anything else? I noticed you have a company called Affirm Science. Is that a good place for people to learn about what you have going on?
Yeah, I mean, so we have a great nitric oxide boosting supplement that's really based on really good science. I just wrote an article for Muscle and Fitness magazine on nitric oxide boosting, right? So some people take beets, some people take citrulline arginine. Ours combines beets and citrulline and arginine because your body gets about 50% of your nitric oxide from nitrates, which are basically beets, and 50% from citrulline arginine, which is basically watermelon. And when I was at UCLA, my professor, Lou Ignarro, won the Nobel Prize for discovering nitric oxide as a second messenger. And then he and one of my professors teamed up to write the paper on how Viagra works, which is, so what nitric oxide does is it catalyzes a process that creates something called cyclic GMP. And cyclic GMP opens up blood vessels. So the more cyclic GMP you have inside a cell, the more you open up blood vessels. And what Viagra and Cialis do are there's a specific enzyme that's only in the penis called PDE5. And Viagra and Cialis and Levitra are PDE5 inhibitors that block PDE5 and keeps cyclic GMP at high levels, which keeps erectile function going. And so, that's why nitric oxide is so important. Now, it's also really important for monitoring blood pressure or helping blood pressure. I get a lot of my patients off blood pressure medications by boosting their nitric oxide levels, right? Because blood pressure medications have a lot of side effects, including erectile dysfunction, right? So if you're on a blood pressure medication and you have erectile dysfunction, it's great to get them on a higher dose of Affirm. I typically put patients on 2 tablets twice a day and have them monitor their blood pressure morning and night, and then transition off their pharmaceutical grade blood pressure medication. And almost always I'm able to keep their blood pressure at good levels. right? And then that Affirm helps with opening up the peripheral circulation, which is where you get erections, and it gets rid of the preferential diversion of blood flow to the central circulation, which is what most pharmaceutical grade blood pressure medications do, which is why you get, which it hurts erectile function.
Yeah, and that product's called Affirm.
Yeah, I mean, we also make Support, which is a testosterone boosting supplement. We make Spunk, which is for prostate health, and we make Prelong, which is for premature ejaculation, which is a problem that, a lot of guys don't talk about. Like Bob Dole was out on TV saying, hey, I have erectile dysfunction, but I don't think you'll ever get anyone out there saying, I have premature ejaculation.
And I've met one person who said that to me. So.
Yeah. But typically they're not going out on TV bragging about it. And so, there's a chapter in the book on premature ejaculation and the stuff that you can do about it. But the supplement that we have called Prelong is a natural selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And SSRIs have been known to reduce premature ejaculation.
Interesting. Good stuff here, Judson. And the book's called The 21st Century Man.
It is.
It's on Amazon. Is that the best place for people to find that and yourself?
Yeah, or you can just go to the 21stcenturyman.com, all written out in letters. Okay. Or you can go to affirmscience.com and you can pick up the book, or you can go to Brandeis, MD, BRANDEISMD.com. That's my own personal website. And I have a lot of resources there. I have ebooks on testosterone, on performance enhancing drugs. I have ebooks on VO2 Max, on Botox for the penis, on Shockwave, on my physical rejuvenation protocol. I love putting out educational content for my patients, and I love sharing it for free with the world. I have a YouTube channel that you can get a lot of this information on, and Instagram, although, I have people that I pay that post for me on Instagram because I still don't know how to use Instagram. Yeah. And then, if you're a guy that is interested in a longer, girthier, better functioning penis, go to p-long.com and you can learn about that protocol.
Excellent. Lots of great stuff. I appreciate you coming on podcast and sharing it with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if you're ever out in Northern California, come on by. We'll check your VO2 Max. We'll see if he can. Brad crushed it. He got a 52.
Let me tell you, he'll beat me. I'm guessing on that.
Yeah, I have a fireman who's 41 years old that used to play for the Jets, and his VO2 Max was only 51. So,
Brad's killing it.
He's killing it.
Thanks, Judson. Appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.